Yesterday, I texted a priest in Chicago. He was my mentor, and he works with the deaf. And I told him, we're having Mass outside and it's 70 degrees. And he said, it's 9 degrees here with the wind chill factor making it 3 below zero. And it's like 64 right now. No, 66. 66. I love Arizona. Yeah, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. Keep it, man, keep it. And the Word was made flesh and made its dwelling among us. I would like to wish you and my priests, deacons, staff, faculty at the school, faculty at the DAP, the daycare and preschool, we all wish you a very blessed and Merry Christmas. We've come together for a reason. And the reason is this little guy right here in the manger. There were times in my life where I didn't get that. I remember years ago, many, many years ago, attending a midnight mass when midnight mass was the big mass. And it was at Our Lady of Mount Carmel. I was probably a preteen, and Mom allowed us to open one gift on Christmas Eve. And I opened this gift that was a Miami Dolphins jacket. Back then they had these, I don't know if they were leather sleeves or naugahyde or what, and then they had a cloth vest part, and I was so happy to have that. Back then there was no pro football team in Arizona, so you picked another one, and I picked the Miami Dolphins. And I remember being at that midnight mass and thinking, man, I wish they'd hurry up, because I want to get to the important part of Christmas, which is tomorrow morning opening all those presents. Even though I was going to Catholic school, and those nuns and priests and all those others really tried hard to instill the reality of what Christmas is in me, I still missed the mark. It's about this little guy right here. This little guy. All the other stuff is icing on the cake. It's good, but it's icing on the cake. Today we celebrate Emmanuel. And he is born in our midst according to the flesh, as it says in the Christmas proclamation, according to the flesh. Why do they say that? Because that little guy, before he was born of the flesh, he always existed with God the Father in heaven as the eternal divine Word. And the Word was made flesh and made its dwelling among us. But he always existed with the Father until that point in time where he took up the flesh of the Blessed Virgin Mary and then was born later a baby, a tiny baby boy. God is with us, Emmanuel. And he who created all that is became a baby that can't even lift its own head. Amazing, amazing. Emmanuel. The deaf use this sign. So the sign for God is like the five hand coming down from heaven. And the sign for Emmanuel is the E hand coming down from heaven and then circling in front of us, or semi-circling in front of us. And so we have this sign for God, and then E, Emmanuel, and then this is a sign for it's the sign for us. I've seen us signed like this, I've seen us signed like this, but it's God is with us. And the Hebrew word for Emmanuel, it is a Hebrew word, Emmanuel. It's found in Isaiah, and we've heard it throughout this Christmas or the Advent season. It's found in Isaiah chapter 7, it's found in Isaiah chapter 8, and it's in the New Testament in Matthew chapter 1, verse 23. And it's the prediction for us in Matthew of the virgin birth of Jesus. In the Old Testament, it could have predicted in part of the prophecy was maybe fulfilled in the king Hezekiah. So the prophet Isaiah goes to Ahaz, who is the king of Judah, which is in the south, and he is in Jerusalem, and he is a descendant of David. And Isaiah goes to him because Ahaz has been pressured by the northern part of the kingdom, the part called Israel. And the king from there, and then a Syrian king, came to him and said, we want you to join forces with us against the Assyrians. And we're actually demanding it of you. And Ahaz didn't want anything to do with this. He wasn't the best kind of king. He was a little bit of a lemon. But he did want to join them, and then he was very much perplexed. And Isaiah came to him and said, look, there's been an oracle from God. Do not join ranks with them. They will not injure you. They will not do anything against you. Don't join ranks with them. This is what God is telling you. He's like, I don't know what to do. I won't know what to do. He says, ask God for a sign. And he says, I won't tempt the Lord. I will not ask for a sign. And he's like, please quit with the false piety. Must you weary man and God as well? Here is the sign. The virgin shall be with child, and he will be called Emmanuel. And Ahaz, he doesn't fully understand. And this prophecy is 700 years before Jesus is born. And so Ahaz doesn't join the northern tribes, and and nothing happens to him at that time. The prophecy could be partially fulfilled. Ahaz has a wife called Abijah, and she becomes pregnant and gives birth to King Hezekiah. Nothing miraculous about it at all, but King Hezekiah was a much better king. He was an image, you could say, of Jesus' goodness and kindness and love and care for his people. But even so, the ancient people of God held on to this prophecy about Emmanuel and carried it forth, saying, this probably has something to do with the Messiah who is coming. And so the prophecy does not lie dormant. It is carried forward, and the idea was it would be associated with the Messiah, and he would free the people from their oppressors. This was the prophecy. He would liberate Israel once and for all. Jesus Christ is the fulfillment of that prophecy. I remember I had several Jesuit priests in the seminary who were very good, very faithful, very solid. We had one. He was teetering. And I remember when he preached the homily for the Immaculate Conception, and we hear this prophecy, the virgin shall be with child. He's up there, right? And this is to the seminary body. He says, wow, this passage doesn't necessarily mean the Blessed Virgin Mary. And it's like, please, Father Miller, let me step to the side while the lightning bolt comes down. And you're like, Father, it's the Immaculate Conception, and you've taken the wind right out of the sails of the liturgy. And furthermore, lex orandi, lex credendi. What the church prays is what she believes, and it's in the liturgy. And if it's in the liturgy, it says, we believe this, that Emmanuel would come from a virgin, and he would save the people. But the salvation is different than what the ancients thought. The salvation is from sin and death. And so today, on this Christmas day, we celebrate this little guy, because that's what it's about. That's what it's about. All the other stuff, the ham, the turkey, all the other stuff, that's icing on the cake. This is what it's about. This little guy who came to save us from our sin and from death. And we celebrate him today on this beautiful Christmas day in Arizona.